Life wasn't easy for Jenny, but she always managed to wear a smile while mopping the endless corridors of Rivera Technologies. Every evening, as the sun set behind the towering glass building, she would watch the employees leave one by one, their designer shoes clicking against the marble floors she had just cleaned. The sound echoed through the empty halls, reminding her of the vast difference between their worlds. Jenny had been working as a cleaning lady there for 5 years now. Her routine was simple: arrive at 4 p.m., clean until midnight, go home to her tiny apartment where her sick mother waited. The pay wasn't much, but it helped keep food on the table and bought some of her mother's medicines. Still, it was never enough. Her mother's health was getting worse by the day. The doctor's bills piled up on their kitchen table, each one larger than the last. Jenny would often sit at night, calculator in hand, trying to figure out how to stretch her meager salary just a little bit further. Should she skip lunch again this week? Maybe she could walk to work instead of taking the bus? These thoughts kept her awake most nights. At work, she watched how the other half lived. Her boss, Mr. Chen, was the company's CEO, young, successful, and impossibly wealthy. His office was bigger than her entire apartment, with a view that overlooked the entire city. He had his own private bathroom that she cleaned every night, complete with a shower and expensive toiletries that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Jenny noticed everything about the office while cleaning: the fresh flowers delivered every Monday morning, the premium coffee beans in his personal coffee maker, and the string of gorgeous women who visited him after hours. She wasn't stupid. She knew what happened in that office when everyone else had gone home. Sometimes she would find wine glasses with lipstick marks, or catch a whiff of expensive perfume while cleaning. One particularly exhausting evening, Jenny received another call from her mother's doctor. The treatment wasn't working as expected, and they needed to try a new medication, one that cost 3 times as much as the current one. Jenny's hands trembled as she hung up the phone. That night, as she cleaned Mr. Chen's private bathroom, her mind wandered to dark places she'd never considered before. She thought about how unfair life was. Here she was, working honest hours, barely able to keep her mother alive, while these people threw away more money on a single lunch than she made in a week. She thought about all the times Mr. Chen had walked past her like she was invisible, never once noticing how she stayed late to make sure his office was spotless every morning. That's when she saw it, carelessly tossed in the bathroom trash bin, evidence of one of his after-hours meetings. A used condom. Most people would have been disgusted, but Jenny saw something else. She saw opportunity. Years ago, she had worked at a vet clinic before it closed down, and she knew enough about artificial insemination to understand what could be done. Her heart pounded as she stood there, rubber gloves still on, staring at the trash bin. The security cameras didn't cover the private bathroom. She knew this from her cleaning routines. She had about 10 minutes before she needed to move on to the next floor. 10 minutes to make a decision that would change multiple lives forever. Jenny's hands shook as she reached for her cleaning cart. Hidden in the bottom compartment was her lunchbox with an ice pack inside. She always brought it, even on days when she couldn't afford to pack a lunch. As she stood there, considering what she was about to do, she thought about her mother's face when she had to skip doses of her medication because they couldn't afford it. She thought about the future, a future where her children wouldn't have to choose between eating lunch and taking the bus. A future where they could go to good schools and have opportunities she never had. Was it wrong? Absolutely. Was it illegal? Probably. But in that moment, standing in that luxurious private bathroom, surrounded by evidence of excess while her mother suffered at home, Jenny made her choice. The security guard gave her his usual nod as she left the building that night. He had no idea that in her cleaning cart, carefully packed away, was something that would spark a scandal and change lives forever. As Jenny walked to the bus stop, the city lights twinkling around her, she felt different. For the first time in years, she felt like she had power over her destiny. Little did anyone know, this ordinary Tuesday evening would be the beginning of an extraordinary story, one that would challenge moral boundaries, raise uncomfortable questions about privilege and desperation, and force society to confront some hard truths about justice and inequality. Jenny spent the next few days watching Mr. Chen's office more carefully than ever before. She noticed patterns she hadn't paid attention to earlier: how his beautiful girlfriend would arrive every Wednesday and Friday evening, always carrying a small designer handbag, always wearing heels that probably cost more than Jenny's monthly rent. The girlfriend would sweep past the security desk with practiced confidence, never signing in, never acknowledging the cleaning staff. From her years of working there, Jenny knew the building's rhythm like her own heartbeat. The security guard, Mr. Thompson, always took his coffee break at 8:30 p.m., clockwork regular. The cameras in the West Wing had a 5-second delay. She'd learned this from overhearing the maintenance team. And most importantly, she knew that Mr. Chen's private bathroom was the one blind spot in the building's otherwise perfect security system. During her evening cleaning rounds, Jenny started taking mental notes of everything. She observed how Mr. Chen's girlfriend usually left around 9:15 p.m., her perfect hair slightly messy, her lipstick slightly smudged. Mr. Chen would always leave exactly 15 minutes later after Jenny had started cleaning the floor below. It was like a carefully choreographed dance, and now Jenny was learning all the steps. She began preparing carefully. She read everything she could find about DNA preservation on her old, cracked smartphone during her bus rides to work. Her previous job at the veterinary clinic had taught her more than just cleaning cages. She'd assisted with artificial insemination procedures for prize-winning dogs. The memory of those procedures, once just a random skill from a low-paying job, now seemed like fate. The ice pack in her lunchbox became a permanent fixture. She started carrying small, sterile containers she'd bought from the dollar store. Her hands trembled slightly every time she cleaned Mr. Chen's bathroom, wondering if today would be the day. But she knew she had to be patient. She needed everything to be perfect. One particularly warm evening, Jenny noticed something different. Mr. Chen's girlfriend arrived wearing a new ring, clearly expensive, clearly an engagement ring. Jenny watched from behind her cleaning cart as the woman practically floated past, showing off the ring to the security guard. Something twisted in Jenny's stomach. Here was this woman, about to have everything, while Jenny's mother couldn't even afford her medicine. That night, as Jenny went about her usual cleaning routine, she heard the familiar sounds coming from Mr. Chen's office. Music playing softly, occasional laughter, the clink of wine glasses. She kept checking her watch, knowing their usual schedule. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely focus on her work. At exactly 9:15, right on schedule, the girlfriend left, her high heels clicking down the hallway. Jenny waited, pretending to mop the corridor, until she heard Mr. Chen's office door close and his footsteps fade toward the elevator. This was her chance, the moment she'd been preparing for. With practiced efficiency, Jenny entered the private bathroom with her cleaning cart. Her hands were steady now, despite what she was about to do. She'd rehearsed this moment in her mind 100 times. The security camera in the hallway would show nothing unusual, just the cleaning lady doing her job. Everything she needed was hidden in the bottom compartment of her cart, beneath the cleaning supplies. The ice pack was ready. The sterile container was waiting. Jenny took a deep breath and looked at herself in Mr. Chen's expensive bathroom mirror. The face that looked back at her was both familiar and strange, still the same tired cleaning lady, but now with something different in her eyes. Determination? Desperation? Maybe both. She thought about her mother at home, probably sorting her pills into the daily organizer, trying to figure out which ones she could skip to make them last longer. She thought about Mr. Chen's girlfriend and that massive diamond ring. She thought about all the nights she'd cleaned this bathroom, invisible to everyone who worked here. Jenny put on her rubber gloves, just like she did every night. To anyone watching, this was just another evening of cleaning. But this time, as she reached for the bathroom trash bin, she knew she was crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. In that moment, standing in the pristine private bathroom of her wealthy boss, Jenny wasn't just a cleaning lady anymore. She was someone taking control of her destiny, for better or worse. The whole thing took less than 5 minutes. When she left the bathroom, everything looked exactly as it always did. The floors were mopped, the surfaces were gleaming, and if anyone checked the security cameras, they would see nothing out of the ordinary. But hidden in her cleaning cart was something that would change multiple lives forever. The next few weeks passed in a blur of anxiety and hope for Jenny. She continued her cleaning routine at Rivera Technologies, acting as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Each morning, she would wake up feeling different, wondering if her desperate plan had worked. She kept cleaning Mr. Chen's office with the same care as always, though now she avoided making eye contact with him on the rare occasions they crossed paths. Her mother noticed something was different too. "You seem distracted lately," she said one evening as Jenny helped her with her evening medications. Jenny just smiled and blamed it on work stress. The guilt of her secret weighed heavily on her, but when she looked at the pile of unpaid medical bills on their kitchen table, she felt a strange sense of justification. 2 months after that fateful night, Jenny started feeling the first signs. Morning sickness hit her hard, though she tried her best to hide it. She would rush to the bathroom between cleaning floors, her heart racing not just from the nausea, but from the realization that her plan had actually worked. She was pregnant. Working became increasingly difficult as the weeks went by. The smell of cleaning products made her queasy, and her uniform was starting to feel tight around the middle. She knew she couldn't stay at Rivera Technologies much longer. Someone would eventually notice. Besides, she didn't want anyone connecting her pregnancy to her time there. One evening, as she was finishing up her usual rounds, she bumped into Mr. Chen's now fiancé in the hallway. The woman barely glanced at her, too busy planning her wedding on her phone. Jenny heard snippets of the conversation, something about a destination wedding in the Maldives, about flying in flowers from Holland. Each word felt like a reminder of why she had done what she did. The next day, Jenny typed up her resignation letter on her old laptop. She kept it simple, thanking the company for the opportunity, citing personal reasons for leaving. She didn't give 2 weeks' notice. She couldn't risk anyone noticing her condition. Instead, she left the letter on her supervisor's desk at the end of her shift and walked out of Rivera Technologies for the last time. Her mother was confused by her sudden decision to quit. "But Jenny, how will we manage?" she asked, worry lines deepening on her forehead. Jenny assured her she had some savings, she didn't, and that she had another job lined up, she didn't. The truth was, she had no idea how they would manage, but she knew she had to focus on staying healthy for the baby growing inside her. She found a job at a small laundromat closer to home. The owner didn't ask many questions, and the work was easier on her growing body. The pay was even less than what she made as a cleaner, but she calculated that in a few months, everything would change. She just had to be patient. As her belly grew, so did her determination. She started documenting everything: her doctor's visits, her growing bump, every little detail that proved this baby was real. She kept track of Mr. Chen and his fiancée through social media, watching from afar as they posted photos of their lavish engagement party, their wedding preparations, their perfect life. What neither of them knew was that their perfect world was about to be turned upside down. Jenny's morning sickness had given way to something else, the first flutter of movement in her belly. And then came the biggest surprise of all. During her first ultrasound at a free clinic, the technician's eyes had widened. "Congratulations," she had said. "I see 2 heartbeats." Twins. The word echoed in Jenny's head as she lay in her narrow bed that night, hands resting on her growing belly. She hadn't planned for twins. It felt like the universe was either playing a cruel joke or giving her twice the blessing. Either way, there was no turning back now. She spent her evenings preparing, reading parenting books borrowed from the library, watching YouTube videos about caring for twins, trying to learn everything she could. Her mother, still unaware of the full truth, assumed the father was someone Jenny had dated briefly. Jenny let her believe that. The truth would come out eventually, but for now, she needed to focus on staying healthy and strong. Each night, as she felt the babies move inside her, Jenny thought about the future. She knew what she had done was wrong, maybe even crazy, but as she watched her mother struggle with her illness, as she counted their dwindling savings, as she thought about the kind of life she wanted for her children, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Soon, very soon, everything would change. And Mr. Chen, with all his wealth and power, would never see it coming. The day Jenny went into labor was unusually cold for September. She had been folding sheets at the laundromat when the first contraction hit, strong enough to make her grab the edge of the folding table. Her colleague, an older woman named Rose, took one look at her face and called for an ambulance. Everything after that became a blur of hospital corridors and medical terms. The delivery room was nothing like she had imagined during all those months of preparation. The lights were too bright, the sounds too sharp, and the pain more intense than anything she had ever experienced. But Jenny refused any pain medication she couldn't afford. She had come this far on her own. She would finish it the same way. 16 hours later, Jenny heard the first cry. A minute and 12 seconds after that came the second one. 2 perfect babies, a boy and a girl, both with surprisingly full heads of dark hair. As the nurses cleaned them up and took their measurements, Jenny couldn't help but notice how much they looked like their father. The boy had Mr. Chen's nose, and the girl had his eyes. There was no mistaking it. Her mother, who had arrived at the hospital halfway through the labor, couldn't stop crying with joy. "They're beautiful," she kept saying, holding each baby carefully. "They look just like—" She paused, trying to remember the boyfriend Jenny had vaguely mentioned months ago. Jenny just smiled weakly, letting her mother believe what she wanted to believe. The twins' first few months were a crash course in survival. Jenny moved back in with her mother, turning their tiny living room into a nursery. She worked from home, taking in people's laundry and doing small sewing repairs while caring for the babies. Every penny went toward formula, diapers, and her mother's medications. Some nights she would stay awake just watching them sleep, amazed at how something that started as an act of desperation had turned into the greatest love she had ever known. But Jenny hadn't forgotten her plan. As the twins grew, their resemblance to Mr. Chen became more striking. She carefully documented everything: their first smiles, first words, first steps. She took photos and videos, saved their hospital bracelets, kept detailed records of their development. She wasn't just being a proud mother, she was building a case. When the twins were 3 months old, Jenny took them for a DNA test. She had saved up for months to afford it, eating nothing but instant noodles to put aside the money. The testing facility was in a different city, where nobody knew her. She told them she needed the test for medical records, and they didn't ask questions. The wait for the results was the longest 2 weeks of her life. Every day, she would check her email obsessively, her heart racing whenever she saw a new message. Finally, it arrived. A simple PDF attachment that would change everything. The results were exactly what she had expected. Mr. Chen was, without any doubt, the biological father of her twins. Jenny spent the next few weeks preparing. She hired a lawyer who worked on contingency, showing him the DNA results and explaining her situation. He was skeptical at first, but the evidence was undeniable. The twins were now 4 months old, starting to babble and grab at toys. The girl had Mr. Chen's dimple when she smiled, and the boy had his exact hairline. Through social media, Jenny learned that Mr. Chen and his wife had just returned from their honeymoon in Bali. Their wedding photos were all over the internet. A lavish ceremony at a 5-star resort with hundreds of guests and a designer dress that probably cost more than Jenny would make in 5 years. They looked perfect and happy, completely unaware that their world was about to be turned upside down. One evening, as Jenny bathed the twins in their small plastic tub, she caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She hardly recognized herself anymore. The timid cleaning lady was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who had created life and was ready to fight for it. Her mother was in the other room, humming as she prepared bottles for the night feed, still unaware of the storm that was about to break. Jenny dressed the twins in their nicest outfits, tiny matching sets she had found on sale at the department store. She packed their diaper bag carefully, making sure she had everything they might need. The DNA test results were safely tucked into a folder, along with all the other documentation she had gathered over the months. Tomorrow morning, she would walk into Rivera Technologies for the first time since she left. But this time, she wouldn't be wearing a cleaner's uniform. This time, she would be pushing a double stroller, carrying proof that would shake the very foundation of Mr. Chen's perfect life. As she put the twins to bed that night, Jenny felt surprisingly calm. Whatever happened tomorrow, she was ready. The truth was about to come out, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning of the confrontation dawned bright and clear. Jenny dressed carefully in her best outfit, a simple blue dress she bought from a thrift store and ironed the night before. The twins were unusually quiet, as if they somehow sensed the importance of the day. She dressed them in matching white outfits, combed their dark hair, and packed extra everything in the diaper bag. The Rivera Technologies building looked exactly the same as she remembered it, but walking through the front door felt completely different this time. Instead of entering through the service entrance with her cleaning cart, she pushed a double stroller through the main lobby. The security guard, the same one who had nodded to her every night for years, didn't recognize her at all. "I'm here to see Mr. Chen," she told the receptionist, trying to keep her voice steady. The receptionist looked from Jenny to the babies and back again, clearly confused. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Jenny replied, "but he'll want to see me. Tell him it's about his children." She gestured to the twins, who were contentedly playing with their toys in the stroller. The receptionist's eyes widened as she looked more closely at the babies' faces. While they waited, Jenny could hear whispers starting around the lobby. People were pointing, staring at the twins. She couldn't blame them. Anyone who knew Mr. Chen could see the resemblance. The little boy had just given someone his signature dimpled smile, the one that was identical to his father's. The elevator dinged, and out walked Mr. Chen's wife, dressed in designer clothes and carrying a stack of files. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the twins. The color drained from her face as her eyes darted between the babies and her husband's office upstairs. Without a word, she turned and ran back to the elevator. Minutes later, Mr. Chen himself appeared, his wife nervously trailing behind him. He looked exactly as Jenny remembered: expensive suit, perfect hair, confident stride. But that confidence faltered when he saw the stroller. Jenny watched as his eyes locked onto his son's face, then his daughter's, and she saw the exact moment recognition hit him. "What is this?" he demanded, but his voice shook slightly. The lobby had gone completely silent. Jenny reached into her bag and pulled out the folder containing the DNA test results. "These are your children," she said, her voice clearer and stronger than she'd expected. "They're 4 months old. Twins. And I have proof that you're their father." She held out the folder, but he didn't take it. His wife grabbed the papers instead, her hands trembling as she opened the folder. "This is impossible," she whispered, but her face said she was already starting to believe it. The resemblance was too strong to deny. Mr. Chen's face had gone from pale to red. "This is ridiculous. I've never," he started, then stopped abruptly. Jenny could see him thinking back, trying to figure out how this could have happened. "I was your cleaning lady," she said quietly. "For 5 years, I cleaned your office every night. I was invisible to you. But these babies aren't invisible, are they?" As if on cue, both twins chose that moment to laugh, a sound that echoed through the silent lobby. The wife suddenly swayed on her feet, gripping the receptionist's desk for support. "The cleaning lady?" she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. She looked at her husband, then at the babies again. "They look just like your baby photos." Security guards had appeared, but they seemed unsure what to do. This wasn't like removing an angry client or dealing with a protester. This was something entirely different. "We should continue this conversation in private," Mr. Chen finally said, his businessman instincts kicking in. But Jenny stood her ground. "No," she said firmly. "I spent years being hidden away in this building, cleaning up after hours, being treated like I didn't exist. These babies exist. They're your children, and they deserve to be acknowledged." More people had gathered in the lobby now, watching the scene unfold. Someone was filming with their phone. Mr. Chen's wife had sunk into a chair, still clutching the DNA results, tears streaming down her face. "You can't prove anything," Mr. Chen said, but his voice lacked conviction. The evidence was right in front of him, gurgling and smiling in their matching white outfits. Jenny reached into her bag again and pulled out more papers. "Actually, I can. My lawyer has everything documented. But this isn't about proving anything anymore. Look at them, really look at them. They're your children. They need their father." The twins chose that moment to reach out toward Mr. Chen, as if they somehow knew who he was. The little girl's eyes, his eyes, locked onto his face, and she gave him a toothless grin that was an exact mirror of his own. For a moment, everything hung in perfect silence. The wealthy CEO, the crying wife, the determined mother, and 2 innocent babies who had no idea they were at the center of a scandal that would soon rock the entire city. The world Jenny had carefully planned for months was about to change forever, and there was no going back now. The story exploded across the city like wildfire. By nightfall, someone's shaky phone video of the confrontation had gone viral. Local news stations camped outside Jenny's small apartment building, hoping to catch a glimpse of the cleaning lady who had shaken up one of the city's most powerful businessmen. Jenny's lawyer, Mrs. Wom, turned out to be exactly the fighter they needed. A veteran family court attorney who had seen it all, she took one look at the twins and the DNA results and knew they had a case that would make legal history. "This isn't just about child support," she explained to Jenny in her cramped office. "This is about redefining parental rights and responsibilities in the modern age." The first court hearing was set for a rainy Tuesday morning. Jenny dressed the twins in matching blue outfits, nothing fancy but clean and neat. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters and curious onlookers. Some held signs supporting Jenny, calling her a modern-day hero for working mothers. Others condemned her actions, calling her names she tried not to read. Inside the courtroom, Mr. Chen's legal team filled one side with expensive suits and stacks of legal documents. They had hired the best lawyers in the city, maybe even the country. Their argument was simple: what Jenny had done was theft, they claimed. They used words like unauthorized collection of genetic material and reproductive fraud. But Mrs. Wom was ready for them. She stood before the judge, her voice steady and clear. "Your Honor, we're not here to debate the ethics of my client's actions. We're here to discuss the rights of two innocent children who, regardless of the circumstances of their conception, deserve support from both their parents." The twins, sitting quietly in their stroller beside Jenny's mother, chose that moment to babble happily, drawing every eye in the courtroom. Even Mr. Chen, sitting stiffly with his lawyers, couldn't help glancing at them. His wife hadn't come to court. Rumor had it she'd moved out of their mansion and filed for divorce. Expert witnesses took the stand one after another. Medical professionals confirmed the DNA results. Financial experts detailed Mr. Chen's vast wealth compared to Jenny's poverty. Social workers testified about the twins' living conditions: small but clean, poor but filled with love. The media coverage grew more intense with each passing day. Talk shows debated the ethics of Jenny's actions. Social media exploded with hashtags both supporting and condemning her. Some called her a criminal, others called her a folk hero. Working mothers from across the country shared stories of their own struggles, their own desperate moments. Mr. Chen's reputation took hit after hit. Business partners started distancing themselves. The company's stock price dropped. Protesters gathered outside Rivera Technologies, holding signs about workers' rights and income inequality. The story had touched a nerve, becoming about much more than just a cleaning lady and her twins. During a lunch break in the proceedings, Jenny sat on a courthouse bench, feeding the twins their bottles. Mr. Chen walked past, then stopped, looking at his children. It was the closest he'd been to them since that day in the lobby. The little boy reached out toward him, and for a moment, something flickered across Mr. Chen's face: longing, perhaps, or regret. "They're beautiful," he said quietly, surprising Jenny. "The boy, he looks like my father." Then he straightened his tie and walked away, leaving Jenny to wonder if perhaps there was a heart somewhere under all those expensive suits after all. The case dragged on for weeks. Jenny's mother's health took a turn for the worse from the stress, and hospital bills piled up even higher. But support started pouring in from unexpected places. Local mothers dropped off baby clothes and supplies. A women's advocacy group offered to help with legal fees. A local clinic provided free medical care for Jenny's mother. The turning point came when one of Mr. Chen's ex-girlfriends came forward. She testified about how he had always been careful about protection, almost paranoid about it. Her testimony made Jenny's story more credible, though it also painted a picture of a man who had never wanted to be trapped by fatherhood. In the final week of the trial, Mrs. Wom delivered her closing argument. She spoke not about the legality of Jenny's actions, but about desperation, about inequality, about a system that forced people to make impossible choices. She spoke about two innocent children who deserved to know their father, to have the same opportunities as any other children of a wealthy man. As they waited for the judge's decision, Jenny sat in the courthouse hallway, watching her twins play with a set of plastic keys. They were growing so fast, already trying to crawl, already developing their own distinct personalities. The girl was bold and curious, just like her father. The boy was quieter, more observant, like Jenny herself. Whatever the judge decided, Jenny knew her life would never be the same. The scared cleaning lady who had made that desperate choice in a luxurious private bathroom was gone forever. In her place was a mother who had shaken up the system, who had forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about privilege, power, and parenthood. Now all she could do was wait and hope that somehow justice would find its way to her children. The judge's decision came down on a quiet Thursday morning. The courtroom was packed, reporters, lawyers, curious members of the public, all holding their breath as the judge adjusted her glasses and began to read. "This case," she began, "has challenged our understanding of parental rights and responsibilities in ways that no previous case has done." She looked directly at Jenny, then at Mr. Chen before continuing. "While the court cannot condone the methods used to conceive these children, we cannot ignore their existence and their rights." The silence in the courtroom was absolute as the judge laid out her ruling. Mr. Chen would be required to pay substantial child support, enough to ensure the twins would never want for anything. They would have access to the best healthcare, the best education, the same opportunities his legitimate children would have had. But there was more. Jenny's actions, while ethically questionable, were not technically illegal at the time they occurred. However, the judge ordered her to attend counseling and parenting classes. She would maintain primary custody, but Mr. Chen would have visitation rights if he chose to exercise them. As the judge's words settled over the courtroom, Jenny felt tears rolling down her cheeks. Her mother, sitting beside her with the twins, squeezed her hand. The babies, now 6 months old, were babbling happily, completely unaware that their futures had just been secured. Mr. Chen sat stone-faced through the ruling. His new marriage had already ended. His wife's divorce filing had cited irreconcilable differences and previously unknown circumstances. His company's stock had taken a hit, but it would recover. He was still wealthy, still powerful, but something had changed in him over these past weeks. After the judge left the courtroom, Mr. Chen approached Jenny for the first time since the trial began. He looked at the twins, who were reaching out toward him with curious expressions. "I want to be part of their lives," he said quietly. "Not because a judge ordered it, but because they're my children too." Jenny nodded, unable to speak through her tears. This was more than she had ever expected, not just financial support, but a chance for her children to know their father. The story made headlines across the country, sparking intense debates about reproductive rights, wealth inequality, and the definition of family. New laws were proposed to address similar situations in the future. Jenny's case became a landmark decision, cited in legal textbooks and studied in law schools. Life changed dramatically for Jenny and her family. They moved to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. Her mother finally got the medical care she needed. The twins grew stronger and healthier each day, developing distinct personalities that somehow seemed to combine the best of both their parents. Mr. Chen kept his word about being involved. It started with supervised visits, awkward at first, but growing more natural over time. He would sit on the floor of Jenny's living room, his expensive suit getting wrinkled as he played with the twins. Sometimes, watching him with them, Jenny caught glimpses of the man he might have been if life had dealt him different cards. The media attention eventually died down, but the impact of their story lingered. Jenny received letters from working mothers across the country, sharing their own stories of struggle and survival. Some called her brave, others called her crazy, but all understood the desperate love that had driven her actions. A year after the trial, Jenny sat in her new apartment's small garden, watching the twins take their first wobbly steps. Her mother, healthier now thanks to proper medical care, clapped and encouraged them. Mr. Chen, who had started coming by every Sunday, stood nearby with a video camera, recording every moment. The twins were walking between their parents, holding on to both Jenny and Mr. Chen for support. In that moment, watching her children topple back and forth between their very different worlds, Jenny realized something profound. What had started as an act of desperation had somehow turned into something else, a bridge between two worlds, a chance for healing, a new kind of family. She thought about that night in the bathroom, about the cleaning lady she used to be, about all the choices that had led to this moment. Had it been right? Had it been wrong? Perhaps it had been both. But looking at her children's faces, seeing them loved and cared for by both parents, she knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the most desperate choices can lead to the most unexpected blessings. The sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows across the garden. The twins were getting tired, ready for that evening routine. Mr. Chen helped pack up their toys, more comfortable now in this simple family setting than he ever would have imagined possible. Jenny's mother went inside to prepare bottles. As Jenny picked up her daughter while Mr. Chen lifted their son, she caught his eye and saw understanding pass between them. They would never be a conventional family, but they had found their own way to make it work. Their story would always be complicated, always be a bit controversial, but it was their story. And in the end, it had given two children the chance at a better life. And maybe, just maybe, it had made their parents better people too.